Hello there, and welcome once again to White Lotus of Light Astrology. I am going to be doing a short video today because today has this incredible event, namely the Pluto return for the United States. So I happen to be born on the bicentennial year, 1976, which means I was born 200 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And here we are, I'm going to be turning 46 this year. And 246 years later, we have the Pluto return. I see a lot of people writing 248 years, and I'm like, well, the math is easy for me because I was born in the bicentennial, and that's just not accurate. And in fact, part of the reason I'm making this video is I've seen a lot of claims on Facebook, such as a return to the Pluto return for the Roman Empire caused the fall of the Roman Empire, and that's a really attractive narrative, but it's just not accurate. I wasn't able to verify that those dates made any sense because I start the natal Pluto chart for the Roman Empire as opposed to the Roman Republic with the coronation of Caesar Augustus, the first real emperor of Rome. You can argue Julius Caesar was, but I think most historians kind of feel that the coronation of Caesar Augustus as the official emperor, and he wasn't instantaneously assassinated, right, as kind of the beginning of Rome. And I wasn't able to corroborate that, one or even two cycles later, and it would have been closer to two, that the Roman Republic fell. It's kind of close. And interestingly enough, it would have been spot on for the birth of the child emperor, whose name also is something very similar to Augustus. I don't recall his name right now. It's Augustavan or something like that. Anyways, he was a child puppet emperor at the very end of the Western Roman Empire when it fell to the Germanic invaders. So he happened to be born the same year that would have been the Pluto return based off Augustus Caesar, but his reign was much later. He was, it was like a decade or something later, and that's, I'm willing to fudge a little bit. Like some people want to say it's 2/22/22 is the correct date. It's actually today. It's February 20th, and I'm going to be getting this out super late. So if you're on the East Coast, by the time this goes up, it'll no longer be today. It'll be yesterday. I'm just going to take a quick moment. I'll just say this real quick. One thing that really, really helps channels such as myself grow is for you to just hit that like and subscribe button down there. I would really appreciate it. It'd be great if you would do that. It helps me to be able to continue to put content out. It helps me continue to gain momentum and steam for this channel. And it helps me give a great platform for people like Grant Eagles, Roderick Z, Laura Eisenhower, who I'm going to be having back soon, Timothy Hogan. Although, let's be fair, Timothy Hogan and Laura Eisenhower, they already have a pretty solid platform. But, I've had so many fantastic guests on my show, and I have more lined up coming up soon. If you just hit that like and subscribe button, it just really helps with the algorithm. So getting back to it, the Roman Empire meme that's going around, it's not really true. I've seen some people saying, oh, it's similar to the outset of World War II. It's not. Most historians consider the beginning of World War II to be the invasion of Danzig, Poland, in I want to say 1939 or 38. I looked it up. I looked at the right date. I ran those down. I really was looking forward to confirming that is similar to World War II and or the fall of Rome. Just didn't find it. So I'm just going to be focusing today, and I'm just going to go ahead and show you here. I'm going to be focusing today on this chart, which is this is the synastry chart between the signing of the Declaration of Independence and the US Pluto return, which I just put in 2/22 because why not? It's fun, right? The time. And this gives you a 0 degree conjunction, which you can see here, Pluto, 0 degrees, absolutely. We got Pluto here today, 2733 degrees Capricorn, and then we have it here at the signing of the Declaration of Independence, 2733. It's even 2733 8 minutes. So I mean, it's dead on, which is kind of fun, which means that 2:22 p.m., which is a few hours ago now, is actually pretty much dead on. And so I want to look at this, but really we're just going to start here. Let's look at the original chart here at the signing of Declaration of Independence. And this is very interesting because some people had wanted to do this on July 1st, but Benjamin Franklin was very insistent not to do that. And I'm just going to read you this super dope ass Benjamin Franklin quote. And he set up this chart to a large degree. And he said this: astrology is one of the most ancient sciences, had in high esteem of old by the wise and great. Formerly, no prince would make war or peace, nor any general fight a battle. In short, no important affair was undertaken without first consulting an astrologer. Side note, it's true today too, if you look. Who examined the aspects and configurations of the heavenly bodies and marked the lucky hour. How the noble art, more shame to the age we live in. Think about how learned they were back then. More shame to the age we live in is dwindled into contempt. I was going to read that again. Now the noble art of astrology, more shame to the age we live in, is dwindled into contempt. Astrology is making a comeback now in the 21st century. The great neglect us. Empires make leagues and parliament laws without advising with us, and scarce any other use is made of our learned labors than to find the best time of cutting corn or gelding pigs. This mischief we owe in a great measure to ourselves, the ignorant herd of mankind. Had they not been encouraged to it by some of us, would never have dared to depreciate our sacred dictates. Strong words by Benjamin Franklin. He goes on to drag a lot of great scientists of the age, especially in Britain, and saying that they had intentionally besmirched the character name of astrology. It's a great quote. It's in one of the Poor Richard almanacs that he put out. You can look it up. I might even provide a link below. We'll see. But anyways, Benjamin Franklin specifically chose the date of the 4th of July, 1776, for the birth date of our country to sign the Declaration of Independence. He did so for a variety of reasons, including for the symbolic reason of the sun would be at 13 degrees of Cancer, which you can see right here, right? And the reason he did that is he wanted to represent the 13 colonies at the founding of the country. And it's interesting because here we are 246 years later, and we're about to witness the country's first Pluto return. Will it survive this Pluto return? Obviously it's on, the day is almost over. It's not like the country dissolved today. That's not really how that works. The way astrology, this kind of astrology, which is sometimes called, not horary, but I can't think of the technical term for the kind of astrology when you're looking at astrology for the macrocosm as opposed to an individual's chart. It's something like plane astrology. It's some word that's a synonym for plane. Oh, it's driving me nuts. Anyways, I should know that word, but it's slipping my mind. This kind of astrology that we're looking at here, especially much more so than a natal chart, it's talking about energies being released, right? Getting a ball in motion, so to speak. And so when the Pluto return happens, Pluto is the god of death in the underworld, right? In the Roman astrology, or Roman pantheon, rather. It's equivalent to Hades among the Greek. But symbolically, what Pluto represents is the great alchemist. It's death and rebirth. It's like the phoenix that dies and burns to death and then rises from the ashes again, right? That is the aspect of Pluto. Pluto is also power and the wielding of power, right? If you look at famous people, they very often, especially famous political people, right? Not so much famous like movie stars or whatever, but people who wield power, right? They almost always have a really prominent, really powerful Pluto in their chart. Ironically, a musician, just because he has something similar to me, which I find fun, Kurt Cobain has Pluto 0 degrees conjunct his ascendant, and so do I. Which clever people out there can now nail my birth chart, but I don't give a crap. So Pluto is about those who wield power. It's also about transformation, death, and rebirth. It can also be about a renewal, right? Like it can be about a renaissance, like rediscovering your roots. basically by realizing, wow, I've really gone out in this direction, but where did I come from? And looking at where you came from, right? It's a return, especially in this instance. Not so much Pluto, but any planetary return has this quality of looking back to where you came from and this whole circuit you've made to get back to this point and all the growth you've made, and kind of examining, does this growth make sense? Or do I need to return to my roots? Or were my roots false and this growth has been good? You know, it's a real time of really considering things. Well, the thing is, Pluto, it has a mega impact. Pluto returns, you know, like most humans, obviously, unless they're Old Testament humans, they don't live to see the Pluto return. Really, only organizations do. And a lot of organizations don't survive their Pluto return. A lot of countries don't survive their Pluto return. And to be fair to the people saying that it's the Roman Empire fell during its second Pluto return, you know, within 10 years on something that's 246-year circuit, that's not too off. You know, and there is something to it. And I do think it's fascinating that Augustan, or whatever his name was, his name is very similar to Caesar Augustus, that's actually more interesting to me almost than the Pluto return thing. The year he was born would have been I guess it would have been 492 years later, right? So 246 times 2. So 492 years from the founding of the Roman Empire, not the Republic, right? Because that goes back quite a bit further, but Caesar Augustus seizing power and being coronated as emperor. Very fascinating. So the reason that I find this Pluto return so significant, you know, is a lot of people have been making a big deal about this, but they're not wrong that this is a big event, but you don't need to put on the extra spice of, oh, the Second World War, oh, the Roman Empire fell, blah, 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 kind of stuff. You don't need to, because let's just look at this chart right now. This is the chart of today, right? At the moment that the Pluto return happened, 2:22 p.m., Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, because, of course, the signing of the Declaration of Independence, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, right? So let's take a look at this chart. There's some interesting stuff going on. You got the south node of the past and Neptune form a grand trine with the ascendant. That's interesting. Neptune being like both Lord of Illusions, but can also be like illusions being removed to the character and foundation of the country would be one way of looking at it, based on things to do with the past. And then actually, I'm going to real quick flip over here to aspects, because I want to zero in on some of these aspects in the Pluto return here. The ones that are really significant to me, or the most significant one to me, the aspect that really, really jumps out at me is this Saturn-Uranus square. And a lot of astrologers are talking about this, so I'm not really turning new earth on that. But nonetheless, it bears repeating. And if you haven't heard it elsewhere, this matters a lot, because Saturn represents, among other things, its boundaries and discipline and death, but it's also the power of the state, right? Pluto is about the wielding of power and the granting of power to some degree, and to see whether you're worthy of power, right? Has the United States been worthy of power the past 246 years? I think you can make a pretty strong claim it was worthy of power up to perhaps the end of World War II. But even before that, there's a lot of nasty stuff, right? You know, like the whole westward expansion, slavery, all this kind of stuff, but the United States also had, civil rights, civil liberties, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, fantastic stuff. It's never been surpassed. I would argue that the frame of governments in the United States is the best the world's ever seen, bar none. It's horribly corrupt now, horribly corrupt, but those founding documents and that founding revolutionary fervor about the triumph of the human spirit and personal freedom and all that stuff. And yes, it was marred. Women didn't have the right to vote. Property owners didn't have the right to vote. Slavery, etc. Although there was debates about giving the women the right to vote, and weird coalitions found around pro-slavery and women having the right to vote prevented people of color and women from being able to vote, which is, a shame. But nonetheless, you've got to look at things within their own historical context. And by any reasonable objective measure, it was fantastic. And if you look at the rights and the way they're enshrined in the Constitution and the way that the government is restrained by those documents, Like there's nothing like it on earth. Look at the Canadian Constitution, which, you know, scumbag up there in Canada just trampled all over, literally, in the case of the poor protesters and those horses, you know. Like their constitution basically says, yeah, we have all these rights, kind of, if the government feels like it, if the crown feels like it, if the government feels like it, but if not, then not. That is, you know, they talk about inalienable rights, not inalienable, but inalienable, meaning that you can't put a lien on them, meaning you can't change these rights. You know, there's no stronger document for the rights of the individual in the face of the power of the government than the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And yeah, I mean, you can get in the weeds on, oh, was the I forget the thing that was before the Constitution. Was that perhaps a better document? Maybe, but you know, like again, you know, like we can just criticize stuff to death and get all postmodern about things until things lose all meaning. In the grand scheme of things, the American Constitution and Bill of Rights is just a fantastic document. So you have state power here in the form of Saturn squaring revolutionary fervor and sudden shocking changes and just the desire for something new, right? And I think it's new in the sense of people are tired of the tyranny, right? I think it's fascinating that as I'm recording this video, there's a American convoy that's making its way to Washington, D.C. I suspect it's going to be met with brutal repression that makes the Canadian version look reasonable, and that's unfortunate. You also have something interesting over here, which is you have Venus and Mars conjunct, which is interesting because you know, that's the divine masculine and divine feminine coming together. And I think that that's going to empower this change to where that the order as it currently is going to be, it's going to be one way or the other overthrown, or it will collapse. And it's going to collapse because you have the divine mandate of the divine feminine, divine masculine coming together, and they're coming together in agreement. You know, they're conjunct. It's also the most intense energy. You then also have Mars conjunct Pluto. Now that's a little scary to me, given this aspect here of Saturn and Uranus, because I will tell you, like, Mars and Pluto, like, that's power struggle, and Mars is violence, and Pluto is, you know, kind of death, transformation via death and rebirth. That's pretty intense. Also, everyone's really feeling the emotional intensity right now, in part because you got Pluto, and it's going to be this way until the moon moves. But right now, today, you got Pluto squaring the moon. So obsessive thoughts, dark thoughts, desire to dominate, which, man, have I seen that a lot recently in a lot of different things. That's tough. And then you have both of the, well, the masculine and feminine are kind of in agreement coming together. They're also this same energy of the male and female is causing like negative emotional feelings, because you got this pretty strong, pretty tight square here between the moon, Venus, and Mars. And so you got that aggressive instinct is causing pain. You've got that desire for like not so much security as like comfort and you know, just things being like material comforts, you know, and desire for things to be material are in direct contrast to like where we're at emotionally. Like there's this strong desire to have a return, I think, to normalcy is what this is saying, and it's just not happening. And all of this kind of, it tells you what is being unlocked by this Pluto returning to its original natal 0-degree conjunction with the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So then if you look here at, actually I doubled up there. If you look here at this synastry chart, there's some things that are interesting. It's quite busy because there's a lot going on. You got that Pluto down there, right? You got, interestingly, this is interesting to me and caught my eye. You got the south node of past life, or I would say the past of this country, conjunct Mercury. There's a strong desire for, I think, freedom of speech to make a comeback when it's been so denigrated by the powers that be, because they're terribly, terribly afraid that this is going to caused their downfall. The current like nasty regime that runs things, that's very, in my opinion, anti-American. And I don't mean the specific administration that's in office, although that's very symbolic of that. I mean the globalists having more or less taken over this country decades ago, and perhaps as far back as the founding of the Federal Reserve and the establishment of the IRS, both of which are very dubious things. You know, the Federal Reserve being ratified on December 24th with the minimum quorum, and then the IRS never being properly put through because it's against the Constitution, never made it all the way through. But good luck proving that in court. You'll notice that you have this theme repeating around Mercury, like expression and so forth. Here you have the natal Mercury is conjunct the ascendant of this new chart that's being created for the next Pluto cycle, right? This is the next Pluto cycle, this outer ring. And here you have Mercury and the vertex, right? So that's like the karmic gateway is conjunct the ascendant of this new cycle. So there's a real desire, a growing desire in the United States to see a return to the original founding principles, in my opinion. But probably very much updated for modernity. Obviously, no sane person wants a return to chattel slavery. And I don't think there's a reasonable argument. I see people try and say this, which is mind-boggling to me, but, you know, saying that that only men should have the right to vote, or people who are super educated only, or whatever. I think you have to really think twice about rolling back suffrage. I think that's highly questionable and dubious proposition. Some people say it, but there's a lot of action going on here. And I want to real quick flip to the aspects chart between these two because I want to show you. So here you have the Pluto, right? 0 degrees conjunct, boom. So here you have, this is the signing of the Declaration of Independence, this side row, and then this top row is today, right? So again, you see that South Node conjunct Mercury, like something wants to come through and kind of must come through that's related to the past of our country and communication. And I think it's that desire for freedom of speech and this real struggle over freedom of speech that's going on right now. Then you have the vertex. This is wild. You have the vertex of the founding of the country is also conjunct Uranus, revolutionary fervor. That's very significant to me. You know, that's the gateway of karma, the vertex, and it's conjunct. So it's the gateway of karma of the founding of the country. And now you have this revolutionary fervor impulse. Then the other thing that I wanted to point out to you guys, and I'm going to start moving away from this, is that original aggressive move against tyranny, right? Which is symbolized by, I mean, you know, the Declaration of Independence is the backdrop of that's the Revolutionary War, right? And fighting back against King George and his tyranny. And that's that energy of that natal Mars in that chart is very much the Revolutionary War energy in terms of Mars, right? That's aggression and fighting back, in this case, for a just cause. And look at this. It's square to the current government, the current power structure that exists today. And is that a surprise? What might surprise people is that actually the feminine principles of the country at its founding is also then square to the Saturn. And I think that what this speaks of in part is that this current globalist regime is anti-women and anti-male. It might not surprise people to say that it's anti-male, but look at the things that are happening to women, artificial womb. You know, not everybody's going to like this, but I don't care. I don't think it's appropriate for humans that have had testosterone throughout their lives to compete against humans that have had estrogen throughout their lives. It's an unfair competitive advantage. I'm all for having a new classification for people who have, as an adult, made the decision to transition, and that they could compete against one another, and that would be a level playing field. The way you can know it's not a level playing field is that guy who is at University of Pennsylvania or whatever, trans woman who's at the University of Pennsylvania was ranked something like 416th or something very low in the hundreds for men, and then made the decision to transition. I am dubious as to whether that person really wanted that or whether they just wanted to be more successful in athletics. You You know, I don't know whether that person felt that way their whole life. Maybe they did, in which case that's, you know, whatever. But they then became number one in women's athletics. And that whole thing is being pushed, which is very different from having equal rights, by the way, in my opinion. You know, I, of course, support everyone to have equal rights and equal access, but that's not what's happening here. This is someone with extreme competitive advantage, you know, having that. And here you have this Saturn, and that's very anti-women. You know, like soon women will have no space of their own if this continues. And it's unfortunate because that actually undermines, in my opinion, the validation and legal protections that our trans community should have, which to me is separate from this issue. And I think that that issue really undermines that. And I really feel that the trans community is being used as a pawn by the globalists for a variety of agendas, which I'm not going to go any deeper into that because that's super controversial. But it's very anti-male. The globalists do not want strong, healthy, masculine men embodying especially the divine masculine, the guardian aspect, right? Because those men are not going to put up with this bullshit. And more men are realizing, wow, they're never going to stop unless we stop them. And the globalists know that, and they're doing everything they can to demasculinize men, and I would say to defeminize women. And they're blurring between all those two. They're inverting things. And this isn't about rights. This is about various groups and causes being used cynically as Trojan horses to get in an agenda. You see, like that's the big problem, is this push towards taking real causes and instead using them to push in a globalist, centralized power, enslavement of humanity model by tricking people, right? Because if you come and you say, hey, we want to enslave everybody and put a brain chip in you, like who's going to go for that? But if we say, oh, it's for your safety, oh, it's for your security, oh, what about this impoverished group? We're lifting them up, you know, because we had this token woman who we gave all this power to execute the consolidation of power and wealth in the hands of men, by the way, right? Oh, we had this black person figurehead, and meanwhile, black Americans are having like their wealth stripped from them, right? You know, so like that whole Trojan horse fucking thing is really out of hand, and the globalists love that shit. You know, that's why they call everyone racist, everyone sexist. And so one last thing I want to point to you here is you can see that the wound that is currently being carried in America, it's the Chiron is in opposition to the moon of the natal chart. So the feminine nurturing essence of the original country, the original foundation, there's a wound now that is in opposition to that. And also, if you look here, the wound at the founding of the country was in opposition to the current power structure. So that wound, to me, that was attempting to be healed by the breaking away from England, was saying that we want sovereignty, we want freedom. And look at that, it's in opposition to the current power structure. So this to me all lines up and says that you're going to see a sea change of events over the next few months and years that will ultimately lead to, I'm hoping, the resurrection and recreation of the United States in something where there's a 21st century version of the vision of what the founding fathers had about freedom and human dignity and the right to decide what goes into your body or what does not, the right to freely associate, the right to worship as you choose, the right, regardless of your skin tone, regardless of your genitalia, the right to have the same rights as everyone else and the same access as everyone else. And that's what people are hungry for, and the right to express themselves, freedom of speech. And that's what's under so much assault today. That's what's being attacked. And the thing is, the truth doesn't need protection, but lies desperately need protection. Those who are lying and gaslighting and attempting to, through psychological warfare and propaganda, they don't want communication. They don't want freedom of association and freedom of communication. because they know that if we're talking to each other and in the marketplace of ideas, if someone can say this is the mainstream medical opinion and someone goes, hi, I'm a doctor who's highly qualified, who's maybe the most qualified person on the planet, and I disagree, and then they go, whoop, you can't talk. Well, how can the marketplace of ideas then show the eventual winner? That's why all tyrants hate free speech and they try and crush the truth. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this, and let's see what happens. I'm hoping for a positive result. I believe it will happen, but I must tell you, with all the things like the Mars square Saturn, and then the Uranus squaring Saturn here, that is a recipe for that things are going to get a lot worse before they get better, unfortunately. And so I've said this before, the most important thing you can do is your internal work and your internal alchemy. That's the rectification of opposites within yourself, integrating the divine masculine and infernal masculine, your shadow, and integrating the divine feminine and the infernal feminine. I've been doing a 33-day ritual with the Ophanum, the thrones, and it's been very much about integrating those opposites within myself and really coming face to face with my shadow. And that's been happening externally as well as this internal process, doing that magic with that first sphere of the angelic choirs with the Ophanum. That's Ezekiel's wheels within wheels that have the eyes all around the rims. They're incredibly powerful beings. And so be sure you're getting your internal house in order, but at the same time, water, food, you may want to consider precious metals. There's a real good chance, based on some of the stuff that's going on economically, that we're going to see a crash of the stock market and a crash in the value of most currencies, which are unpegged fiat currencies that are just monopoly money, basically. There's certain crypto that you can consider, but that one's tricky. There's a lot of bullshit out there. There's a lot of just flash in the pan nonsense. There's Dogecoin and Shibcoin, which are built in to be worthless, but somehow have captured people's imagination, gambling instinct. But there's really good solid coins out there. There's really good privacy coins, and you want to look into those and notice that they just seized people's crypto wallets up there in Canada. And so you probably want to be thinking about how to get that off the exchanges and get it into at least a wallet on your computer, though. That's still Windows 10. That's Bill Gates, right? There's backdoors with that. You probably even want to consider a cold wallet, but be sure you're really careful with all that stuff. Be sure you're extra careful. This isn't financial advice. It's just my opinion. You want to consider having a cold wallet and having all your passphrases written down someplace that you can keep safe. And be sure you're able to defend yourself. There's nothing wrong with being able to defend yourself and your family. Anyways, much love to you all. If you joined it, hit that like and subscribe button. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time. Have a great day. Bye.